If I were to summarize why I'm doing this whole weight loss thing, it would come down to this. I want you to go out and live your kingdom calling in freedom. I want you to be able to do God's work without the burden of excess weight. Well, today's episode with Stephanie Gass, it's going to inspire you to put all the things aside, the excuses, the stinky thinking, the lack of discipline in whatever area of your life. And we're going deep into a conversation around how to build your life God's way without the hustle and without the striving. I love having Stephanie on the podcast because you're going to get a glimpse into a mindset of a high-level thinker, a seven-figure CEO, someone who is doing amazing kingdom work and taking care of her health and walking out all of these disciplines needed to thrive in life. Stef has been a mentor of mine. She's the creator of the God-Led Business podcast, and she has influenced hundreds of businesses in the art of podcasting. And you're going to understand how blessing follows obedience, how discipline can become desire. If those are things you want, then I want you to pop in your earbuds and let's have some fun together today. Hey, welcome to the Kingdom Fit Moms podcast, where we believe that you can go on a journey to lose weight for the last time. I know you've tried all the things and you may not believe me yet, but when you do weight loss the Kingdom Fit Moms way, everything changes. You're in the right place if weight is constantly on your mind, you're confused about food, you're missing out on memories, and maybe even putting your dreams off for another day because this weight struggle is no joke. We're a community and we're on a mission to invite God into this weight loss journey so you can shed the burden and shine your light. I want you to start living and believing in the version of yourself that heaven sees. Let's get started. Hey friend, real quick, if you are so tired of starting over, of doing good for a few days and then falling right back into old habits, thinking about food all the time, I created something just for you. It's called Fit Fueled Free, a 5-day weight loss bootcamp designed to help you finally break out of the all or nothing cycle and start seeing real, lasting change. We're not counting every calorie, we're not obsessing over every macro, and we're definitely not doing another extreme plan that you cannot sustain. Instead, you'll learn how to actually stay consistent even when life is busy, fuel your body with simple, real food, and finally feel free from that mental weight of dieting. Because the goal isn't just to lose weight, it's to become the woman who doesn't keep gaining it back. So if you're ready to stop starting over and start doing this the way that actually works, come join us inside Fit Fueled Free. Spots are open now. Just head to kelseyWickenhauser.com/free-bootcamp and reserve your spot today. I cannot wait to meet you inside. Hi, Steph. Welcome to Kingdom Fit Moms. So happy to have you today.
Yay. Hi, friend. Good to see you.
In our Fit Moms community, one of the things that we love to talk about in relation to our health is how it opens up this whole world of being able to live out our kingdom purpose and our calling. And you have such a unique story. So I'm excited for you to share that with everybody.
Amazing. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I know that part of your story is walking away from striving and hustling. So maybe you could start by sharing, how were your eyes opened to the fact that you were building this life in business your way and not God's way? Like, kind of what shifted for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have been a full-time entrepreneur for 15 years. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned in striving and building something the world's way was in my business. But funny enough, now that I'm 40, I'm like, all of a sudden I can see so clearly, like, how come 40 is this magic number to like your life making sense and everything kind of falling into place? If you're not there yet, you can look forward to that because 40 is feeling real good. But basically, I joined this network marketing company after I had been laid off from my corporate career. And at that point, I really wasn't in relationship with Jesus. I believed in God and I would have called myself a Christian, but There's a big difference between that and like actually knowing and being truly yoked with the Lord and his plans for your life. And so at that time, I was just focused on how am I going to make money? How do I work from home? Because I want to have babies and I want to work from home. And that was the entire premise of why I set out to build that business. And I think when you set out with the premise to do something with only the end goal in mind, like even with health, and you think about, well, I just want to lose the 50 pounds. And that's the only focus that you have. And it's the only why behind it. And it's this elusive end result. The way that you get there starts to lose its way, or you start to lose your way in the path that you take to achieve this goal at all costs. So that's what I did. And I hustled and I sacrificed everything in my life to making it in that business. I took calls when I could have been reading to my babies. I put it above my marriage in some cases. I was awkward about it. Like I would trample over anyone and anything in order to do it. And I ended up making it. I hit all the goals I set out to hit. I walked the stage in front of 20,000 people. I hit the 60K bonus. I got the car. I got the trips. I got everything. But I felt awful. My heart was just broken in life and I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt more empty than ever. And I made it and the recognition and the accolades, like none of that was doing anything to fill me. And I think that's when I realized, to your question, like, when did you realize something was wrong? The moment that I had everything on paper, but felt worse than ever, was turning to alcohol for how do I even turn off my brain? Looking for any excuse to drink or to do something that was going to be harmful and highly addictive. Like, well, let me just shop, or let me just do this thing, or let me just like constantly doing something to try to fill myself. And so that's when I realized, and lucky for me, having, I was saved at 9 years old. I definitely didn't grow up in church. I wasn't taught how to have a relationship with Jesus. And I think that's the important thing. If you guys are listening, like, it's not necessarily something that has to be modeled for you. It's just something that you have to speak out, and God will meet you in that desire. And so I got this notebook and pen one day after my business started falling apart. Believe it or not, I had reached the top, the pinnacle of everything. And when you build something the world's way, when you lose weight the world's way, when you do anything that's not godly, it's quicksand. And so that quicksand started to kind of just move, and I was drowning in it. I was losing revenue. The company, the business was falling apart beneath me. I went from this awesome standpoint in the company to like, gosh, an eighth of the income that I had been making the year before. And so I had this really hard, like, make or break moment where I had nowhere to go but God. And so that's where he meets us in our bathroom floor moment, some people call it, or the calling out to God, like it's just the rock bottom, the breakdown. And that's to get our attention. And so because I was saved at 9, he never forgets about you, and he always loves you through all your growing and all the trials and the things that are going to strengthen you. But yet, hi, I'm still here and I still love you. Are you ready to look at me yet? Moment, I got out this notebook and pen because this particular month was the hardest, because that money was all gone. I had been striving and striving. Like, what is it all for? Started coming up for me. What was I doing this for? I've wasted all this time to find myself worse off than I started. It was all for nothing. And I had to go to my husband and say, like, we didn't have the money to pay the mortgage that month. And that was the most gut-wrenching, awful, come to Jesus, actual literal moment ever in that process. And that's the day that I went and got out a notebook and pen and I started journaling to God. Like, I can't do this my way anymore. I'm, broken. I had a newborn at the time, and I was like, just everything felt like a mess. 60 pounds overweight after having baby, all the hormones you're dealing with, not making any money. Everyone can tell you failed at business. Everything, like, had to borrow money from your kid. Life is not great. And so that is the moment. That's what opened my eyes. And so I hate to say it, but sometimes if we're willing to open our eyes sooner to the little clues, then we don't have to wait for the big catastrophic, avalanche in your life to hit you. I was just super stubborn. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from that experience today, now that I'm 40 and everything makes sense and we have 20/20 vision, is like, the second something creeps up, Kels, I'm like, what is it, God? Like, I'm so open to him bringing something up to me. Immediately, I'm listening because I don't want to go through that again. I do not need to have my attention be gotten. Like,
Mhm.
I'm listening, God, because now the business that I lead today, it's been, oh gosh, probably 9 years since that whole like writing on the paper, crying out to God moment where I was like, I'm going to surrender this. I have to build with you, Lord. Like, totally new business now, did it with the Lord. It wasn't easy. All of that said, like, what he's co-created with me over the past 8, 9 years, 100% kingdom, bigger than anything I ever dreamed of or expected. But yet I work less than I ever did.
Mhm.
I'm more peaceful. It reaches way more people than I expected and actually changes their lives. Like, it's a legacy work that I'm doing today versus what I was trying to do when it was on my own shoulders.
Yeah. I love how you spoke to just this idea that the Lord, He did give you that desire. Like the desire was there to do this thing. And maybe you didn't quite interpret it right initially, but it was when you started laying a foundation that was from Him, little by little, that it worked, right? And so I think that's such a good point for all of us that like He puts those desires in our heart and we have to wait, we have to listen, we have to slow down. And maybe it takes a long time to build it, right? How long have you been in business now to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a full-time entrepreneur for 15 years, and the first 8 of those were that whole hot mess learning experience. And this business that I'm in today has been 8 or 9 years now because I've been podcasting for October will be 8 full years.
Yeah, wow.
And yeah, I'm a huge overnight success, right? 15 years later, my body's finally like strong and healthy and like finally doing this God's way and my health as well. And that only took, 30 years. And so that's the point though. The
Right,
point is, how do you commit to being kingdom in every area of your life for the rest of your life?
right. And I'm sure if you had just skipped to the end and hadn't had those hard moments, you wouldn't be who you are today. You would have missed out on so many things just of what the Lord wanted to teach you through that, right?
Yeah. And I think sometimes the biggest, hardest fall that you have, it's a huge clue to your calling.
Yeah.
And so God knew and went before me and knowing like what I was going to be doing today, that had to take place because I was going to help thousands of women walk through a similar experience. And so it was all divine that I didn't listen the first time and that I had to experience that deep gut wrenching failure phase of my life because that was going to be a foundational piece of the calling that I was going to have in the future. So,
Wow. I think that can relate to so many women listening too, because so many of us have been in that failure place in our health journey, right? Like, oh, I've
yes.
I've lost 50 pounds and it's all back again
Yeah.
or whatever. And so if you can have that mindset of, but why are you taking me on this journey, Lord? And what's next? What's the freedom that you are setting up for me? What is this next piece of my journey that's going to become a testimony?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the things I'm sharing, they're about business, but they're 100% a parallel to, yeah, a health journey, a weight loss journey, a marriage, a parenting. I've really realized that it's almost a framework that you follow that's the same for every single area of your life that God has created for you, because we're not just created to be one thing or to be holy in one area. If we look at the Proverbs 31 woman, she gets a lot of flack because she's just so perfect. But the reality is she's not perfect. She's operating in godly order. She's operating in what God's capacity is for her, which means it's truly limitless. And that's why she shows up and she actually acquires property and she shows up in her home and her children, her husband admire her and she's healthy and she wears what beautiful clothes and feels confident in them. She's all of these pieces because if we can lock into what God has for us in each area, it's a blueprint for how to model that in the next area of your life as well. And
For sure.
so whether it be health or anything else, it's all the same process and it begins with him 100% of the time.
Yeah, I love that. So for you, what has that been like practically to
Mm-hmm.
build your life God's way? Tell us a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about, your routines or your
Yeah.
mornings or your
Yeah.
decision making. Give us a glimpse into
Sure.
that for you.
So I will say this has been an evolution. So not to look at me and be like, I'm never going to be able to do all of that or be all of those things. I think this has been a decade of stacking one spiritual discipline or spiritual commitment, if you don't like the word discipline, over time to where it became so ingrained in who I am that I don't have to think about it anymore. So, one of the very first things I started with was I need to get up before the rest of my family and get with God every day, because I noticed when I would start my day with the Lord and give him my first fruits, which we know financially we're called to give our first fruits, but what about physically, tangibly, mentally in the morning? That's my best. By 4 p.m., like your girls, we're done. We're gone. So it's like first thing I'd wake up, and at first I was fumbling my way through because I didn't know how to read a Bible or how to properly pray. Right. And so NLT version, middle school level, y'all thank me later, life changing, got the Bible I could understand and just started kind of journaling through New Testament, also started there and really started to understand like, God, what do you want to say to me today? And I noticed that when I would do that, even if it was small, the entire day was shifted. And that Romans 12:12 verse just like started to become me, right? Like be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I started to experience that in my life of like, I'm totally different in the way I react, the way I show up, the way I even feed my body, the way I choose food. Everything is different when I start. So that morning routine became a non-negotiable. And I started to commit to that over time. It stretched from 15 minutes to an hour. I'm not perfect, but I actually look forward to it now. So what started as a discipline became a desire because I experienced the fruit of what happened when I did the discipline. So if you're struggling in this area, just remember like any time that you're doing something that God or scripture leads you to do, you're going to be better for it and you're going to start to desire that thing. So maybe a discipline, but will become a desire. I think that's really important. The other thing that I did, which this is pretty crazy, but I started with a fast from the social media apps every weekend. And I did this for 3 years. It was life changing. And so that actually led to me being completely social media free for over 2 years. I ended up loving it that much that I did a month, which turned into 6 months, which turned into 2 years. And now, yes, I have a presence there as a company, but the addiction's totally broken. Doesn't mean I don't touch my phone way too much. I totally do. And I want to end up doing something with the phone itself. And that's been percolating. But it's looking at your life and going, where do I have idols? What do I reach for more than the Lord? And being really honest. And it's going to be gut wrenching. And I did it with alcohol as well. Got rid of that idol in my life. Been sober for almost 5 years now. And so really it's this question of like, what do I not want to put down? And I started praying over that. Lord, give me the desire to not use social media, or give me the desire to not want to drink alcohol. And then the desire will grow in your heart over time. It doesn't need to be an overnight process. So I started to relinquish things that were stealing from my adoration of the Lord because my adoration was going elsewhere. And that has also been insanely important because anything that's above him is it's just stealing from the possibility of your own life being completely full and fulfilling. And that's the enemy's decoy. It's like, yeah, but you love this and you deserve this, whatever that might be for you. Shopping, your phone, even your kids can sometimes be an idol. And so we have to be honest about what that is and let the Lord work that out. And then some of the other pieces for me, I treat my health as a complete non-negotiable. This means I've invested in health coaching. You can spend more money on some food that might be higher quality. We built a home gym because the schedule wasn't allowing for the gym anymore. And for as much like we live in the mountains. So it was like, we don't have time for all that stuff. So we invested in a home gym so that we could work out from home. And so that's a non-negotiable. I actually build my business around my workout times. That's how seriously I take that, because when I feel that I'm at my best physically, I see the mental shift there. I see the brain fog lift. I see my confidence rise. I see my capacity actually increase in energy. And when I'm feeling that way as a CEO, everything else is experiencing it in my business. As I feel that way in my marriage and motherhood, I'm more patient, more present. Have you ever noticed when you feel off or sluggish, or you just ate like all the McDonald's and somebody sets you off because you feel bad, you treat people badly. And that's just an overflow. of how you're operating. And then the last piece for me on practically building it God's way is I have lots of systems, rhythms, and automations, lots of them. One of the biggest two questions in my life I ask all the time. One, how can this be easy? And two, how can this be more efficient? And so if you put that lens through everything in your life, you're going to find limitless hacks to stop wasting time, to be more effective. One example I'll give you just to make that sticky for you is the mornings were always a mess with my kids because it was like, what am I supposed to do now, Mom? What time is it? And everything was constantly looking at me. And so I was stressed. We were constantly rushed. And so we ended up getting the skylight, and they have their routines in there now where they know, oh, at 6:45, I do this. And at this time, I do this. And so instead of looking at me, they look at that thing to self-manage all the way up until it's time to leave the house. And so that's one example. Or meal prepping all of my proteins on Sunday and Wednesday. So now I'm not spending time cooking when we're really busy on the weekdays. It's planning ahead in your life and being really efficient and effective about how do I make this week feel as easy and as efficient as absolutely possible. And all of those things are a huge evolution. So start with one, commit to it for a month or so, get it locked in, let it feel like it's become a part of your life, and then you can add the next thing on.
Yes. And you said something to the effect of, because I want my life to feel full, right? In all the best ways. And
Yeah.
when you can let go of all those enemies' distractions
Yep.
or the temptations there and realize that, would you say, disciplines become desire? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that is the pinnacle of this whole thing, right? This
Yeah.
whole journey, because we want to live abiding in the Lord's presence. So I want to remove everything that is distracting me. And yeah, I'm not perfect. There are plenty of times that I'm reaching to my phone or, tempted by things. But if we at least have that mindset of life full, life abundant, let's set up these systems, these disciplines one at a time, then yeah, it's a beautiful journey, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's the key word is journey. If it takes you a lifetime to get to the woman God's created you to be, well, what a life well lived.
Right.
And so journey is, hey, it's going to take what it's going to take, but I'm going to wake up and try again today. Even if I failed yesterday, that's fine. Today's a new day, and tomorrow has enough worries of its own. Today, I'm going to show up in what God has for me.
Yes. And on that note, there's a lot of moms in our community who maybe as they're breaking out of the struggle and they have the mind space to start dreaming again, they maybe feel a little bit torn. Like the Lord has placed this calling, this desire in me, and I have these, tasks at home. I need to disciple my kids. So I'm kind of curious for you, how have you been obedient to this mission of running a
Yeah.
business and being present in your home?
Yeah. So I will say that I 100% failed at this for all of that time that I was building the world's way and put building a business first over, being really present with my kids or feeling like, oh, they're stealing from the time I could be working and feeling resentful in that. And come to realize the reason that that happened is I was great at work, so great at it. Knew how to sell. I knew how to show up. I knew how to be successful. And so looking at the root of what are the things that you just want to go escape to. And it's usually because that's the area you feel the safest in, you feel the most seen, or maybe in your past, how you've received love, right? For me, oh, I show up and I do good and then I am loved. I do, and I'm loved. And so what's really interesting about that though, is that it left guilt and it left what I call discernment alarms going off. Like something's not off. Why do I feel bad that I just did that? And so after that whole reckoning that I went through in my breakdown year, really, and kind of like turning to the Lord, fully surrendering to Him, just being truly born again, I started to realize that if God's called me to be a kingdom business owner, and He's also called me to be an awesome mom and a present wife, then God's going to make sure that there's enough capacity and time and resource for all of those things. And so what I had to do is start disciplining my own internal desire to go do the thing that felt great, to do the thing that God had gifted me in the moment. So for example, if my kid's like, hey, can I read last night? My almost 12-year-old goes, "Can you just snuggle me? I'm going to read to you."
Oh.
In my head, I was like, I would love to go watch some YouTube shorts and chill like before bedtime because it's been a crazy day. But that little whisper was like, girl, soak it in. I was like,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I lay down, I listened to his little story. And I think what I tell myself in those moments is like, God's a redeemer. So, oh, I had a plan to go build my business right now, but someone calls me and they're like, hey, I'm having a hard time. Can you talk me through this? I'm always going to choose the person that needs me right now because God will redeem the other thing he's called me to do. And
Mm.
what's weird, Kelsey, like I have seen this happen a million times over where all of a sudden my schedule fully clears out that following Friday.
Mm.
I'm like, how did I just get 6 hours to work on my business? I'll tell you why I was obedient to the other things he called me to do this week. And so you
Yes.
got to trust that he's going to work these things out. I think the enemy's lie is that you only have capacity right now. But the
Mm.
reality again is like, let's look at the journey here. What's the big reason that we're all here? Well, it's to be the hands and feet of Christ. Like, what would Jesus do in this moment? Like, he'd sit at the table and he'd listen intentionally to his family. He
Mhm.
would take that phone call. He'd run to the neighbor's house and drop off groceries. Like, he would stop the car and help the person. Like, he would be doing these things, even though he had, a speech to make at the Mount, right? Like, it didn't matter what he had to handle what was right before him. And then all of those things were always redeemed. And it's the same for us. And so I just share all of that with you for you to know that it's normal to feel torn, but that you are called to be incredible in every area. Not incredible, you're called to be God honoring in every area of your life. And that God has a way for you to do that. It's his will for you to do that. And he'll make a way for you to do that. So pray for it and try to discern your own actions in the moment and choose. Go back to that old middle school phrase, like, what would Jesus do right
Mm.
now? Choose that every time and then watch. I call them the micro miracles. These micro miracles work themselves out. And I go, oh my gosh, I just got 3 more hours of time, or I just got whatever happened in my health journey, right? I see this huge thing happen where the schedule aligned and I'm able to go to the class that I missed or whatever it might be. So that's it. And I think just remembering that there's always going to be, always 100% of the time, there's blessing that follows obedience. And it might be delayed blessing, but there is always fruit that comes from that in the moment.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of women also they feel torn to not leave their kids so that they can go, exercise. So I love that. The blessing follows obedience, even in the ways of like for you, for example, you're instilling identity in your kids of going for your dreams and entrepreneurship and doing hard things and persevering. So I think it can be flipped both
Yeah.
ways. And again, the key is abiding with the Spirit. How can I invite the Lord into this? What would Jesus do? And just taking those little micro steps. So good.
And I'll say to that, like that concern or that example that you gave me, when fears like that creep up, like I want to go to a gym and I want to start doing these classes, but I feel so guilty about leaving my kids, whether at home or in the daycare. The first thing you do is you capture the thought because you know that the fear itself is not from God. So you take the fear, say, Lord, I have a fear that's been planted by the enemy, and I'm going to surrender it to you about this. I want to go work out and steward my health, but I'm scared to leave my kids. Lord, help me diminish that fear and then see what happens. For me, what I would do is I started journaling because God would give you an answer, like journal over it. And so I'd go, okay. And I'd start writing out what's the worst that can happen. And I'd write down all the worst things in the world that could happen and realize none of those were true whatsoever. I ended up leaving the kids in the gym daycare and they were like, yeah, can we go to the gym daycare again? We love it. And finding out like, oh my gosh, like this was actually such a benefit to them and to me. And so you'll find the truth if you can hand it to him and kind of workshop with him. So the Holy Spirit is your counselor. And I'm just reminding you that any fear that comes wrapped up as worry or fear, like make sure that you're capturing that and giving that to him in the moment because there is 100% of the time a solution and he wants to give that to you.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for you, obviously you teach podcasting. Maybe our listeners don't know that, but Steph has been
Hey.
really pivotal in my journey of even having this podcast, and it has allowed me to pursue my passion as a coach and still have capacity to be with my family. So How about you? Like, how has podcasting opened up
Mhm.
the world for you to do the things that you love in both realms?
Oh gosh, podcasting, it's been such a gift. Before podcasting, I was trying to grow a bit. I've always been called to be, in business, to be a leader. And I should know the method that I was going to use. And so it was constantly trying to find my method. And it was YouTube videos and it was taking forever. And I had little kids and it was just not working. And it was then vlogging. And then it was, I'll try this thing and I'll make all these random offers. I was just all over the place. And I had a prophetic dream in 2018 because I had continuously been praying over this, like, Lord, what's my way? What's my way to reach these women that I'm called to help? And I had this dream in 2018 and I heard and saw start a podcast. And I was like, that was clear. Like, very rarely do I get like an extremely clear, like maybe 3 times in my life where it's like, oh, that's from God.
Hmm.
And so I started the podcast and man, God's hand was on it. And I think there's just such, you will know when you're finally in alignment with what God has as either a path for your health or a path for your business or something new you're doing in your marriage, and you just feel it, like it's being blessed by God because you're experiencing those micro miracles, you're feeling the fruit, the difference. That's what was happening with the podcast. And that allowed me to go from 20 hours a week trying to grow on social media to 2. I got 18 hours back. Talk about God redeeming time.
All
Because
right.
now I had 18 hours back in these pivotal years when my babies were still little. And it wasn't like too late that I missed all this because I was building. It was like, thank you, God. Like, I had 18 hours and they're still home. Like, what an amazing gift back into my hands. And so podcasting allowed me to grow a very successful, very, very profitable business in those 2 hours a week for a long time. And once the kids were in school, I was able to really scale that, grew the team, took the podcast and, moved into all the next big things that were really a jumping point because of the podcast, the way it had edified me. But the reason is that I was able to do it around my kids and around my health and without getting ready, without videos, and just record, edit all the flubs and mess ups that I made and speak directly to the person's heart that I wanted to help. And it built her trust immediately because where else are we able to garner attention anymore? We have 15-minute bursts of high dopamine hitting short form content like Instagram and TikTok. But podcasting allows you to go audible, which allows you to remove the visual stimulation and drop deep with people. Those of you guys still listening to us, like, we're 30 minutes in and you're still with us. That is not normal in
Right.
this day and age. And so what that does is it opens your heart to get to know us more in a shorter amount of time and to trust, right? You trust Kelsey. Now maybe you even trust me and you just met me. And so that's what podcasting did, is it opened the door for people to want to work with me quicker and without me wasting a lot of time to try to get her attention. And so that was amazing. And like I said, it opened up margin, all this time back in my life, deep connection. And the cool part is that podcasting, because it's long form, it has no shelf life. So some of my top episodes were actually from 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that's really cool. To your point, Kels, of like, last year you had a baby and you guys went through all of that with surgery and all of these things. And your podcast still allowed you to connect with people, to even make sales without you even being present. And that's the power of having something in the world. And even whatever it might be on your heart to share, podcasting, whether it's for profit or not, it's a way to show up in a small amount of time and bless the world with the knowledge that you have. And God always is fun and has surprises, I think, for almost everyone who ever does this and says, you know what, I don't know where this is going, but I feel the nudge. I feel in my gut that the Lord has me in a position where he wants me to share, that there's a gift on the other side of that, So it's been amazing.
Yeah, I love it. It's so much fun. So
It's so
I
fun.
appreciate you walking in your calling to help all these other people do it too.
Thank you.
So if our audience wants to hear more from you about building your life God's way or learning more about podcasting and releasing their calling in that way, how can they find you?
Yeah. So come over to my podcast. It's called God Led Business, or you can just look up my name, Stephanie Gass, StefAnieGass. And gosh, almost 1,000 episodes over there now, which is crazy. And then as a listener of Kelsey's podcast, I have a gift for you guys. If you are interested, in podcasting are curious, like maybe I want to start a business or maybe I want to have a podcast and talk about the things that I'm excited about, I have a boot camp for you guys and I have a code for you to get it for free. So if you go to stephaniegass.com/bootcamp and use the code Kelsey, you'll get it for free as one of her listeners. And this basically goes through a 5-day training on what is podcasting, how does it work, how do they make money, what could my podcast be about, and kind of understanding all the nuances of podcasting to see if that might be a good fit for you.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Steph, for blessing our audience today. It was a lot of fun.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.